Hello, my friends and enemies. Glad you're here. If you enjoyed this video, or the channel as a whole, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, liking the video if you think we did a good job, and most importantly, sharing this video everywhere. We would greatly appreciate it. Your support means everything to us. Thanks to everyone who already supports us. Little disclaimer, I've had my doubts about the show, but this is me trying to give an unbiased, objective review of the Rings of Power. If they do something good, then I'll praise them. If they do something bad, I will call them out. But I will try to look at the show from a perspective of entertainment, lore, realism, and cinematic quality. So please bear with me. This could be a long one. Oh, and it's going to be pretty spoiler heavy, so if you want to watch the show without knowing anything, you might want to skip this one. That being said, feel free to come back after you have seen the episode. We begin with the one thing we enjoyed not being in the last episode, the Harfoots. Nori and the stranger are talking while eating, and he is learning to speak from Nori. He somehow doesn't know what killing is, but he knows what death is. Makes no sense to me. But Nori tells him he is good before being called to start moving the train again. Poppy sings her mother's favorite song for migrating, and I'll give her credit to the actress. Her voice sounds good. The song tries to incorporate the whole "not all who wander are lost" into the lyrics, but you can decide for yourself if you think it is a good song for Tolkien's Legendarium. Personally, it feels too modern and out of place. The Harfoots, along with the stranger, travel far distances, and we see the map again, which is a nice touch. Oh, looks like Feminine decided to show up with her entourage. Classic trailer shot. The creepy eye contacts look like they tried to make her eye just a black dot in the middle with baby blue irises. Doesn't fit, and it looks strange. Failed to make sense. Also, where is she looking? She turns her head and just looks at something, but we don't know what, and then it cuts to the next scene. Adar is staring at the sun and is joined by an orc, and he has the orc show him his arm and asks what it feels like, and the orc says it feels like fire. Adar says he wished the orc could feel what he feels, but the sun will soon be gone forever. Then he has him summon the legions. Bronwyn's shoes are in perfect condition. I'm not even joking. They look like they have never been worn, let alone just recently been run through the forest to find her son, or hiked from her village to the tower. She then begins to announce Adar's terms: surrender and swear fealty, or die. The way she talks is really annoying to me. She asks who will stay and fight. Hands begin to raise. But then the butcher shows up and says they have better chances of surviving under their new lords. He convinces a large portion of the villagers to follow him to swear to their new masters, since the ancestors survived servitude. He tries to get Theo to join him. Rowan follows him. So, yeah, I don't know. Something about this actress that plays Bronwyn, just, I can't like her. She's too clean, I guess. Like, everyone else around her is covered in sweat, mud, and grime, and she's like perfect. Got her makeup on, lipstick. She's ready to go dance to the nightclub before, morning or something. I don't know. It's like she just seems like she's out of place because she's not done anything, I guess. Like, unless she's the only person who has the ability to just take showers and baths and stuff whenever she wants to, and everybody else is deprived of this wonderful contraption known as a bath or a shower. But somehow she's super clean. Boots look like they've never been worn. Clothes look freshly laundered. And everybody else never seen water in their life. It confuses me, and I don't really understand what the point is. But anyway. So the ships of Numenor prepare for war. And the port looks like it's full of ships, but it's actually only 5. That's That's a really small number. Elendil is checking the loading process and heads to his books to figure out supplies. Isildur tries to talk to him, but he ignores him. When Isildur catches up, they have an argument because Isildur was not chosen to go on the voyage. It's a father and son butting heads, something Tolkien's work never even inferred. Isildur wants to be put at the front of the line of volunteers. So, nepotism. Using his father to get ahead. Kind of scummy, to be honest. Not exactly Tolkien's Isildur's traits. Elendil asks him what his qualifications are. He isn't in the Sea Guard, the Queen's Guard, or in the Merchant's Guild, so he's rejected. Ar-Pharazôn is fleeing the scrutiny of Númenóreans who are wanting to know why he is throwing away Númenórean lives. Once again, political. But what I think is hilarious is that the throwing away Númenórean lives is 500 soldiers on an island that should house hundreds of thousands of people. Like 500. One, it's pathetic that that's the only amount they're actually sending, but we'll get to that probably later. But strangely enough, Elendil's daughter is freaking out and is completely against this. Ar-Pharazôn's son catches up to her, and she asks why his father isn't stopping this. She is told that his father is loyal to the queen. She really wants him to talk to his father, and he says his father closes his ears when he speaks. And her response is telling. So speak louder. Which is not a good thing to do because that's not. It's one of those words or phrases that you use where you're inferring something that's simplistic, like just increasing your volume. But what it actually infers is something of a greater, how should you say it, violent tendencies? Like, make somebody do what you want them to do with force if necessary, which is also kind of a political thing. And I mean, I already don't like her because she doesn't exist, but now she has no reason to be like this. In fact, all of Númenor has no reason to be like this. They've already established colonies. They've already been known for seafaring people who conquer evil and other lands and whatnot, and subjugating like Umbar and all that. This isn't a first for them. This is like they're used to this. So the whole concept that they're just, no, we're against this, doesn't make any sense. But her saying to speak louder, it sounds like irrational thoughts filled with emotion welling up into a bubble about to burst. And again, just to reiterate what I just said, it's just all strange because the Númenóreans love to do, like if that's the one thing they love to do, is to throw on their weight and strength. You know, showing up, conquering lands. History is consistently that way. But the showrunners, for some reason, want us to believe that the Númenóreans are cowards who would hide on their islands, being useless forever. That's not a proud people. It's cowardice. Númenóreans were many things, but being a coward was not one of them. Hey, Halbrand finally got to the forge. He got a guild badge, but we don't know from where. Or do we? Probably stole it as his character. You know, it's just Halbrand. Guards show up and escort him to the Queen's war room. Ar-Pharazôn is there along with Tarmiriel and Galadriel. He gives some information, and Ar-Pharazôn leaves to relay the information to the Sea Guard. Tarmiriel explains what will happen when Lord Halbrand makes landfall. He is caught off guard. When he tries to correct her, Galadriel womansplains that he is carrying the burden of royalty and is not fully aware of its full weight. So Tarmiriel is summoned by her father in the tower, and after she leaves, Halbrand and Galadriel have an argument. It seems that Halbrand gave Ar-Pharazôn the information about Galadriel's tower climbing escapade, Assassin's Creed style, in exchange for freedom and a guild crest. But Galadriel also used him to get 5 Númenórean ships with a total of 500 men to take back to the Southlands. And here's where we're going to get into the numbers. I need to clarify something here. This This is Flaming Goat Swallow. Numenor could field a massive fleet and tens of thousands of troops. And all they promise is 500 men and 5 ships. What if they go up against 10,000 orcs? 500 will just defeat them all? They aren't behind a wall and slowly killing off their enemy as their reinforcements arrive and then take a time to save them. Helm's Deep. It's an offensive measure that would end more like Faramir's charge than one of Eomer's. Oh, but I forget. They will have a secret weapon. Galadriel. She will single-handedly defeat all the orcs, wargs, trolls, balrogs, and dragons that the enemy flings at them. Then she will look back and tell them that they should head back since she did all the work. Like, why even ask for an army? She's a superhero with no limits. And also, to the point of she asks for ships. Why she needs ships? She already thinks she can freaking just swim across the entire Sundering Seas. She doesn't need a boat. She just jump in the water and swim. What are they going to do? Throw a fishing net, catch you, bring you back every time you jump in the water? I mean, you literally escape to any part of the corner border of the entire island, jump in the water, odds are they're not going to find you, at least not in a reasonable time period. And even if they did find you, you could already single-handedly take down a troll, so incapacitating a few people wouldn't be very difficult for you. And then on top of that, you could threaten them to, like, force them to sail to Middle-earth and drop you off. But no, she wants to have an army. But her concept of an army is 500 people? Because that's not an army. That's like a patrol. Like, a legion is 1,000, but even then, a legion would not stand against crazy amount. Like, the Rohirrim on the Battle of the Pelennor Fields was like 6,000 versus 10,000, but it was also 6,000 cavalry, which hits harder, hits fast, and tramples the people to death. So you can clean out house pretty quick with cavalry, and you only need like typically a small portion of cavalry historically, like the winged hussars from Poland and whatnot. They took, I think it was like 1,500 I think winged hussars and like 3,000 cavalry, and took on like 30,000 footmen and just wiped the floor with them because they're the best cavalry in history, in my opinion. And they just wrecked them hardcore. But here's the thing, all cavalry, and they actually have experience in that field. Numenorians would have experience, but orcs also have essentially never-ending numbers. So every time you kill them, they can always fill the rank. Men can't reproduce as quickly as orcs, and orcs can cover territory like via numbers much, much greater, much, much quicker. So 500 guys piling into 5,000 would pretty much just be certain death. If those orcs were to, I don't know, shoot arrows at the oncoming 500, they'd probably kill at least half of them before they even got to them. And that's if they don't even have like pikes or spears or wooden spikes, traps, anything like that when they show up. So 500 isn't going to do very much. But Halbrand tells her off while ripping off his family crest and tells her to find someone else to crown. And see Exhibit B. So the Harfoots are going through territories that are kind of scary for them, but there are fallen statues. This show is really trying hard to be Lord of the Rings. Too hard, in fact. Poppy even says, "What madness made them choose this way?" Remember Gimli's line? "What madness drove me there?" It's like, it's almost a literal copy and paste. And the statues? What civilization would have created these statues? The Numenorians haven't moved in yet. The prior civilizations were not great craftsmen and had no great works of art. It was when the Numenorians came in that all these statues and these great works and cities and whatnot, like Osgiliath and whatnot, were built, and all the fine artistry and the trade and the wealth flowed like crazy. And then once Sauron came back and retook them and were attacking them and trying to, get into like Minas Tirith territory, these are all things that decayed and were destroyed either directly by the minions, most likely, or just eroded over time because a long time passed from the colonies that the Numenorians had founded, and that eventually they would have withdrawn from them and they would have crumbled into decay and or were destroyed. So they're in the kind of the northern side of the Southlands, and as far as I'm aware, the Numenorians don't have anything there yet because they were mostly coastal cities for the most part. And historically, through Tolkien's Legendarium, the faithful went up further north, and the regular Numenorians that could be considered black Numenorians or whatever go south towards closer to Umbar or southern Gondor, that kind of area. And that's where they place different colonies. So the faithful would basically go up to where Arnor ends up becoming in existence at some point, and the other colonies would be down closer to Gondor. This is north of like Mordor. They haven't gone that far in yet to build anything. So why are these statues here? Also, on the screen, you see the little pile of rocks that look like they're just styrofoam cubes, or those little chewy gum things that come in cubes. Like that, how they even collapse doesn't make sense. So it's just like a quick, lazy, just throw it on, make it look like it's supposed to be there or something. I don't know. But there are warg tracks nearby, and from where they were pulling wagons, Nori and Poppy just run right over to them, directly leaving the carts. And while they were moving, they saw these tracks from 50 plus yards away. I call nonsense. So the old Harfoot hag is talking to Sadek Burrows and blaming the bare woods on the stranger, like he came all this way down ahead of them, stripped the land bare, and then went all the way north to find them, just to travel all the way down south again. Tells you about their intelligence level and it not being very high. She suggests they should have stolen Nori's family's wheels and left them to die. Sadek is flabbergasted. I am not flabbergasted because they've already shown that this is what they would do, but this sounds like even worse. So, yeah, can these Harfoots be any more despicably evil? Leaving their friends to die for something as small as the place they arrived in not being like it was when they left? Like nothing else in this world could have accounted for this phenomenon. Nothing. Crazy Hag asked what it would take. Make a widow of somebody? Or an orphan? Lady, you were just advocating for the deaths of your supposed friends. But at the slightest potential of discomfort, you are willing to abandon them to their deaths. But their lives don't matter to you, because they aren't you. Scum. Hag goes off to collect food, but Nori and Poppy show up to warn of wargs before they hear the howling, I guess. They run back towards the wagons, but they are small folk, and wargs can move faster. They get surrounded, and Nori tries to break a branch off the tree for defense. Now, these wargs, they call them wolves, but they look more like boar, with like the snout, head, hairy part of a boar with the body of a warg. It doesn't make sense to me because wargs fit that as well, because there's different types of wargs depending on the region you're in. So I don't know. This The show doesn't make sense. They probably don't have, I don't know. Did they say warg in this already when they released it on Arondir and stuff? I don't know if they actually said it, but they might have said like the beast or the wolf or whatever. But either way, I don't know. Maybe they don't have the actual rights to say warg. Maybe I don't know. But whatever. So the boar wolf that is supposed to be a warg, and whatever reason they call them the wolves, they don't resemble wolves at all. But the CGI isn't the worst thing in the world, at least so far. I mean, I still prefer practical effects, like the effects for the wargs in Lord of the Rings were fantastic, and that was many, many years ago. This is the modern era, and they still can't replicate that good a quality. But it'll depend on how they represent them further and whether or not I change my mind. It could go down, it could go up. So the stranger just shows up as the warg is trying to eat Nori, and it like lifts it off the ground and throws it away. Because a full gallop warg would be able to be stopped by a human, or even a non-human. Like, right. Despite showing up to save them, I get the feeling the hag will blame him for all this happening because her brains are made of soup. Rotted soup. Leaking from her diseased head. So the stranger just falls while yelling and slams on the ground, flinging the wargs back with a blast of air. Or a shockwave. One of the two. It just kind of shows this random little thing. One of them hurts its paw, and then they run away. Pretty anticlimactic. Also very unlike wargs. Like, wargs are not the brightest of the bunch, but they're very bloodthirsty. So getting flung back probably wouldn't be enough to get him to go away. What is this? Using magic now hurts your arm and leaves welts behind? This isn't a Tolkien thing. So some Numenorean warrior trainees are clashing swords to get experience, and Galadriel approaches Elendil, who's watching them. This is the image of her after he asked her to teach them. She's taking on anywhere, I believe it was 5 to 6 of them. Granted, none of them have any experience with weapons because Numenor doesn't train their up-and-coming folk as any type of military matters, which is funny because they're very militarized. That's probably the best word. Military-like, whatever you want to call it. And she like blocks a whole bunch of their attacks with 2 swords and then flings the swords up. Now, keep in mind, she just states to not use brute strength, to use finesse and dexterity and all these types of things, which you're thinking, okay, that makes sense. But when you get 5 or 6 people slamming swords down on you, you probably don't have the strength to fling them back. Now, granted, Galadriel is highly athletic, even in the Tolkien Legendarium. But I still think 6 would be a lot. I mean, heck, 2 of them would probably be a lot. But whatever. It's just, it's flashy, it's quick, and if you focus on Galadriel, it could be considered a half decent scene, choreography-wise. If you focus on anyone else, it's horrible. It's really bad. I'm sure Night's Watch and Shad will go over the fighting sequences, and then, yeah, it's cringeworthy. I'll go back, actually. So she tells them the basic way to kill an orc. Stab, twist, and pull. She then tells them to come at her and see if she can score flesh. Elendil offers to promote anyone who can touch her to lieutenant. One of Isildur's friends thinks he can. All we get is a pathetic attempt at swords play. Galadriel's confident that she can't get hit, and doesn't. Can't have that. The boy, like an incompetent floundling, doesn't step in close and prevent her from blocking, but instead tries to stab her at range. He fails miserably. His buddy jumps in, and they both get woman-handled. Isildur is nearby, and I can already, taste him getting a hit on her, getting promoted, and that's how he gets into the expedition. I mean, not really. They're not going to be that easy on him, but that's the level of quality writing I have come to expect from these people. But Galadriel is taking on 4, sometimes all 6. At the same time, just wipes the floor with them. But Isildur's friend manages to tear her sleeve a little bit and gets the promotion, even though he learned nothing and had to have 5 other people help him to get it. Seems legit. So Ar-Pharazôn is listening to his son plead with him to stop the Númenóreans from going to war, but Ar-Pharazôn doesn't want to stop since he sees it as beneficial to lift up the lower men and put them in Númenor's debt. Then get many things for Númenor: an economy, tribute, allies, all the above. They can greatly benefit from this. So Taramiriel is with her father and tells him she's going to Middle Earth. He says she shouldn't go because all she will get will be darkness. And the joke here is that Taramiriel is supposedly going to be blinded in Middle Earth, and she will wear a blindfold so that people will not know she's blind, because that makes sense. The showrunners take everything very literally. Like dark elves. They think they're actual black people. They're just elves that haven't seen the light of the trees. The stranger is mumbling to himself, and Nori shows up to tend his wounds, but he's whispering some words, and ice grows on his arm, and she grabs his arm, which gets ice on her hand, and she freaks out. Then he shouts, and she gets flung back, and she flees, and he has kind of an evil look on his face. They're really trying to sell him as Sauron or something. But back in Lindon, there is a gathering of elves and dwarves. Elrond, Celebrimbor, and Gil-galad, with Durin, are having a meal. Gil-galad asks why dwarves have been so active lately. Durin asks why Lindon is so interested in the Southlands. Elrond jumps in to prevent disaster, which any reasonable lord would see coming a mile away. Then Durin asks where they got the table from. It's made of a pretty stone that apparently is used for dwarves, for great statues or dwarven tombs to honor their dead. So Gil-galad dodges the question and apologizes for sacrilege and offers to have it delivered back to the dwarves. They toast in friendship. When they clear the table, Gil-galad is talking to Elrond about lying to his king, but Elrond says that it was him that was lying to Elrond. He says that when Gil-galad sent him to Khazad-dûm, he was fishing for something. First off, Gil-galad didn't send him to Khazad-dûm. Celebrimbor asked for more people, and Elrond brought up the dwarves. Gil-galad had nothing to do with sending them there. Could he have manipulated Elrond into going? Sure. But we have no information that would lead us to that conclusion. So the writers can't even stay consistent, at least to some level. So Gil-galad has Elrond recite a legend of a battle on top of the mountains of mist that was apparently over a tree and was said to house a Silmaril. And this is kind of a cool image. It's heavily CGI'd, but it's kind of a cool image of a fight basically between an elf and a Balrog. So this elf faced down a Balrog to save the tree. The battle went on for an endless time, but lightning strikes the tree, and the roots went deep in the mountain and became mithril, because, trees grow on stone. Like, anyone? Does this sound like good gardening advice to you? Do you think this mountain of stone and rock is going to have the dirt necessary to make a tree thrive, let alone a massive tree like this, which is like an oak tree that's going to need a lot of nutrition? And that high up is probably above timberline, which means you ain't going to have trees. Now we can kind of see some behind the little mountain, behind the elf, kind of in the distance. But even then, that wouldn't survive if they're above timberline. And you could see in the very bottom left corner, they're pretty high up. And I don't know if you know this, but trees don't grow above timberline. Just saying. So when they go in the deep in the mountain, become mithril, it's like it doesn't make any sense. But I don't like this portrayal of Gil-galad at all. He's nothing like Tolkien's Gil-galad, who is honorable and just. This thing is a selfish, greedy, manipulative slime ball. It's a disgrace to the character and the professor. The elves don't need Mithril. But because it is supposedly caused by a Silmaril, they deem it theirs. Let's see how long Elrond keeps his promise to Durin. And the next scene is so ridiculous, I don't even have the answers to your questions. Like, Gil-galad takes Elrond to a tree where the ceremony took place in the first episode. But then Gil-galad's mouth and the voiceover are not the same. Like, not even remotely. At one point, Gil-galad is talking through the voiceover, but his mouth is completely shut. They changed the scene. I do not know what was supposed to be said, but it is not done as the original. It's this scene, if it helps you any better. But the tree is rotting. It's supposed to be proof that the light of the Eldar is fading. No idea how that correlates. Gil-galad menacingly asks if the dwarves found the ore or not. I'm like, what will you do if they did? Attack them? They can pull back in their mountain and you can kiss any help from them goodbye when Sauron shows up. Are you going to raid them and storm their halls blindly and steal from their people? What would make you that would make you lesser than the orcs? Because you started out as good and repeat the same sin over again. At least the orcs are evil and stay and act evil. You are good and will act evil because of metal. Elrond sticks to his guns and refuses to break his oath to Durin, but Gil-galad treats honor like a dirty rag. And Elrond is left wondering if he should stick to his guns. Isildur's friends are partying, and he shows up to try to get his now promoted buddy to put him on the ship, but the friend doesn't want to risk his name for Isildur to be wishy-washy and fold when the going gets tough, which is a fair point because they've made Isildur a terrible character in this show, and I would not blame them for doing that. But they make up. There's that. So Ar-Pharazôn's son sneaks on board of one of the ships and attempts to sabotage it, but before he tosses the lamp, he hears a cough. How convenient. Oh, and it's Isildur being a stowaway on a ship. Who didn't see that coming? Isildur tries to get the lamp away from the sun, and the lamp falls and lights the oil on fire. They go upstairs, but the sun gets knocked out by a swinging pulley. Then the boat full-on explodes. Not burst into flames. Explodes. It's like a Michael Bay film. Then everyone comes to see what happened, and it sets another ship on fire, which explodes. Isildur swims, carrying the son to the docks, and says that he was in a fishing boat and would have drowned if you hadn't gotten him. Elendil just accepts it and goes to report to his superiors. Ar-Pharazôn wants to delay the voyage until they win the more hearts of the people over, but Galadriel disagrees and says that the enemy is becoming stronger every day. No duh. He has been for thousands of years because you were too stupid to read a map. Galadriel reminds them that they still have 3 ships, because being down 200 soldiers is better than having all 500, which is still tens of thousands less than what they should be arriving with. And there's a lot more, like, Numenor has a lot more ships. They don't just have 5 ships. So Elrond seeks Celebrimbor's counsel about Mithril and learns that Celebrimbor has no honor either, learning that he was in cahoots with the High King. But he also learns that Mithril never diminishes its light, and it could save the elves. As far as I'm aware, this is not canon, and Amazon made it up willy-nilly thinking it sounded good, because I don't know how light and mineral, or like Mithril or a metal ore is going to save the elves, I guess. The best thing I can think of is that they melt down the metal and make something out of it, and then that thing helps save them. But allegedly, it's their souls that are what need saving, or they have to go back across to Valinor, and then the enemy will take over all of Middle Earth without them there. It's like, okay, but how? Like, none of this makes sense. They don't give us any reason. They just say, we need this metal. I'm like, this is metal that's used for armor. Now, I'm presuming they're going to try to spin it to where this armor is used in the actual forging of the Rings of Power, specifically the Elvish Rings of Power. but we'll see. So Celebrimbor recounts the history, or the story, I should say, slash not really history because it's butchered, of Elrond's human father going to Valinor to plead with the Valar and totally butchers it. Saying that his elven mother begged him not to go. But she was with him, and Elwing also had a Silmaril. They wouldn't need Mithril if they had a Silmaril, but the Valar gave it to Erendil to become a star. And if all you have to do is see this light in metal, why don't you just look at the stars and see the stars, and then bam, you've got your feeling better moment. So Galadriel goes to Halbrand and tries to convince him to support her and the voyage. He explains that he did terrible things before he was on that raft, and we see Bronwyn's people that follow the butcher arrive at the village and bow to Adar. Then Galadriel says this stupid phrase that to understand the light, sometimes one must first touch the darkness. Halbrand asks what she knows of darkness, and whose dagger did she have? She says it's a brother's, and he died in a place of darkness. Which doesn't make any sense, since the show showed us him dying on a battle. Nothing about it being in a place of darkness. Halbrand learns that it is all about vengeance. He asks her why she keeps on fighting, and her answer is because she cannot stop. That is absolutely the most ridiculous reason to do something. She made it about revenge. She made it about herself. She drags others into it. It's all her. And all we get is a lousy answer to a valid question. She then lies about the company she led mutinying against her. No, she mutinied against the High King. She is playing the victim. I cannot like Morfydd Clark. She's not a good actress. Her face is wood. She refuses to open her mouth to speak and just mumbles words. She is so unlikable. Her thoughts on the fans also make her unlikable, but this hurts to watch. So the butcher begins preaching his undying love for Sauron, who he thinks Adar is, and Adar tells him to kill Rowan to bind his allegiance. We don't get to see it, but it is implied that he kills Rowan. Theo is practicing archery, and Arondir gives him some advice, and we learn of Arondir learning of the people of the land he watched over, and that's why he stays. I want to know why they don't just all leave and head towards Elven lands. It makes no sense. But Theo feels the need to tell Arondir about the broken blade. Arondir says he has seen it once before, and he pulls away some vines. Would you look at that? Plot contrivance. I mean, a similar looking sword on a stone wall. It's sculpted to look evilish, I guess. This doesn't make any sense because it's an elvish tower, and there'd be no reason for something for Sauron to be there. The elves would have destroyed any wicked thing before building. Arondir tells Bronwyn that the sword is a key, one that Adar wants to become a god and give the orcs a place to live. They may have days or hours. Bronwyn wants to bow to Adar because she sees no other way. Arondir tells her not to. Then she says the tower will fall. Then they both have a light bulb go off, and then they look at the tower. Adar stares at the tower, and his orcs start moving toward it, in marching order. Durin and Elrond are headed back to Khazad-dûm, and we find out the whole ordeal with the table was a joke, and that Disa just wanted a new table. Elrond comes clean about the reasoning for coming to Khazad-dûm initially, though not being aware of it at the time. He explains that without Mithril, his people will diminish or leave the shores forever. All of which is made up. Flaming donkey guts. But Elrond tells Durin that the fate of his kind is in Durin's hand. Durin tells him they need to find a way to convince his father. And of course, Gil-galad was stalking them because he was just going to follow them the whole way to Khazad-dûm and listen in on their conversation. Dude is creepy. Halbrand is summoned, and drops his crest on the table. Then suddenly he grabs it back. Now he is armored up and looking like Aragorn, the kingly one. All the other main characters are getting their armor shots, and the armor is bad. The armor is bad mostly because the helmets are ill-fitted, and the fact that women are in the army is hilarious, but worse that they are so proud of their 300 strong army that they think they're going to get a sealed deal of victory with a pathetic force over what is supposed to be a growing power of evil. Not to mention it's been thousands of years growing, and in 1,000 years you can get more than 500 orcs. Just saying. I got nothing. We see Isildur in the expedition, and his sister is not happy. But he is. But how did he get into the expedition? His daddy. Thinking he was in the cavalry, which he is, his dad gives him orders to report to the horse master because he gets sweeping manure duty. The classic scene. Galadriel arrives on the ship in what seems to be elven armor. How? It's just magically appeared? No answers in this series. I don't know why her chest piece is pushing out so far, because there's nothing there to protect. It's going to be just a hollow cage, which, from what I understand, is possibly even worse than having it to your chest tight. But I digress. So the soldiers all look like children barely off their mother's apron springs. Not a soldier class. They will get destroyed by an orc army. So Galadriel and Halbrand embrace arms as the call to sail to Middle-earth is given by Elendil. And here we have the great navy of the Númenóreans, able to overwhelm its foes and transport massive armies over long swaths of ocean. The legendary trio, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, also known as the Three Musketeers of the High Seas. Still would be a better story than this. The quality of the props leaves much to be desired, and it is doubtful that the quality will increase. But in the name of Eru, get rid of Morfydd Clark and get anyone else who actually has talent in acting, and get better writers so the show is worth our time. Well, that's the end of the episode. Any parts seem like good storytelling? Do all the character arcs make sense to you? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks again for sticking around. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, but most importantly, please share this video everywhere. Thanks for all of your support. Walk in the light, my friends.